Welcome to How to Cook That. I'm Ann Reardon and this is an episode of Cake Rescue where we take cake fails from across the internet and show you how to rescue them. Let's start with this first cake by Maddie.
And I did everything by the box, but there was a giant gap. This is the worst cake I've ever made.
All that work and what did it get me?
First, let me recreate the fail. She used a box cake mix, so I've made that. Now for the store-bought frosting, spread that on and put it together. Add some more on top. Now, there's not a whole lot of frosting in these little containers. There's kind of enough to put on top of a cake, but not all over the sides. Then she cut a chunk out here and added some pink frosting on the sides and some sprinkles for good luck and the bunny ears on top. And there you go. I think that's pretty accurate. Now, if I came over to your house and you wanted me to rescue this, here's what I would suggest that you do. Number one, grab a plate because cakes always look better on a plate than they do on the baking tray. Take out the ears and save them for later. Pick up one half of the cake and put it on the plate. Get some jam, and we're going to use that in the middle because we don't have enough frosting for the middle. Pick up the other half of the cake and put it so that the flat sides or the bottom of the cake are together, and that solves the gap problem. Next, get rid of the sprinkles and smooth out the frosting that we do have so that everything is covered. Now, I feel like the head needs to be a little bit longer, so I'm going to cut some off the sides and add it to the front. And if you've still got those chunks that we cut out before, let's add them to the back for the tail. Now this shape is not great, but for a simple rabbit cake, it will pass. So now you just want to add some shredded coconut for the fur and to try and hide all the cake crumbs that we have in our frosting. Press that into the sides and cover all the gaps, and then just use some candy for the eyes and a jelly bean for the nose. And add the ears back into place. You could leave it just like that, or to make it pop, mix some green food colouring into the rest of the coconut and add that all the way round the edge, and your bunny cake is rescued. Moving on to the next cake fail.
I'm trying something I've never done before. This was a complete fail. My family will forever make fun of me for this cake now. If you can't tell, the bottom part will be a wooden spoon. I'm starting to sculpt his face, add his fur. I added his arms. You can't guess the cake, because what the heck is that supposed to be? I was attempting to make Remy from Ratatouille.
What is that?
If we take a look at Remy, he is tall and thin with a skinny neck and a big head, which is a really difficult shape to make in cake. If we overlay that shape here, for the width of that baseboard, Remy would need to be this tall, so the central support is just not high enough. When it comes to 3D cakes, I'd suggest that you draw it out first so that you can plan where those supports are going to need to go and how big they need to be. As a general rule, I don't like to have more than 3 layers of cake without adding a support in place. And then once you've got that planned, you can then use that to make a template as to how big each layer of cake needs to be, which reduces the amount of cake and frosting that you need to carve off later. Then you just cut out the pieces of cake and stack them up in order, paying attention to where each hole is positioned because they're not necessarily in the centre. Now, it's apparent that this cardboard is not going to be strong enough for the weight of the cake, so I'm going to have to take that one off and use wood instead here. That is much more secure. And now you simply use your template to carve the shape of the cake from the side and the back. Templates do take quite a while to design and think through, so if you're not confident in making your own, I've got more than 40 different cake templates on my website that you can use, which is a good place to start if you've never done a 3D cake like this before. Once you've used the template to cut the shape from the side and the back, there's only a tiny bit of hand carving that you need to do just to round out the corners. And then you're ready for buttercream. You need to make sure that you're 100% happy with the shape of your cake at this stage, and then you can put it in the fridge and start making the fondant details. One thing that Justin did really well is he tried something new when it was not needed for an occasion. And that's a great way to learn a cake decorating technique because there's no pressure. If it doesn't work, you can just laugh it off, eat the cake and try again another day. And even when you make a cake fail, you still learn something about the process, even if it's just learning what not to do. Now it's time to wrap the cake in fondant. Now, notice the fondant doesn't change the shape of the cake at all. If you don't have that shape right before you add this, it's not going to fix it by adding fondant. By the way, I have some exciting news. Dave's second book launches on July 9. It's called Deadline. And it's available for pre-order now on Amazon and from bookstores like Barnes & Nobles, Waterstones and Indigo, or if you live in Australia you can get it direct from us. I'll put all those links in the description below. And for bronze patrons and above who pre-order Deadline, we will be posting you a special exclusive hand-signed book plate. I'll put all the details of how you can claim yours on Patreon. And if you haven't read the first award-winning book in the Deep Enders series, make sure you get that one first, or you could listen to it on Audible, narrated by Dave himself.
Chapter 4. All around him, Broome was bubbling with urgent, sweat-stained life. But Murph had never felt like more of an outsider. It wasn't a big town, but it was busy with civilians and soldiers, rifles slung over shoulders and slouch hats turned up on one side. A military truck roared along the main street carrying US troops, or Yanks as the locals called them, to reinforce the town's airfield. Once a sleepy little strip of flattened dirt used for deliveries and occasional passenger flights, the Broome aerodrome was now bursting with Australian and US defence aircraft. The war machine was in full swing, with soldiers replacing much of the civilian population who, fearing Japanese invasion, had fled south to Perth, 3,000 miles away. Murph Turner? He turned and spotted an Aboriginal boy heading his way. He was about 14, with a mop of dark hair and a big smile on his light brown face. "Yeah?" Murph said cautiously as he stood up and dusted off his pants. "How you going, brother?" The boy grinned. "I'm Banjo." Hi," Murph said, trying to adjust to the unusual accent.
Get your pre-order in so that you don't miss out. Now for the spoon, I want to make that out of chocolate because it's yummier and stronger than fondant. Just pour a thick layer onto baking paper over the template, and once it's just setting on top but it's still soft, cut around the edge of the template so that you get that spoon shape. Then, using a brand new comb, scratch in some wood grain pattern. Then at the top end of the spoon, dig it out a little bit and indent it in the centre there, and then add wood grain in the middle too. Now that looks pretty good, but it's a little bit thin, so we're going to flip it over and thicken it up, especially at the top on the back, and that also lets us add wood grain on the other side too. This spoon is pretty big, and ideally I should have planned a support coming from the centre pole for it. Now I'm going to make do by just adding a skewer and pushing that into the cake, and at the base here I'm going to put a screw into the board at the front to stop the spoon from sliding forward, and we'll cover that up with some rosemary. Add the ears. Now I made these out of modelling chocolate and it's not setting firm how fondant does, so I suggest you make ears out of fondant if you make this cake, and then make the hands and the arms and add them into place. And there you have a Remy cake. You can of course add whiskers using just thin pieces of spaghetti. I'm leaving them off for transport reasons. If you want to see what we did with this cake, you'll have to check out the behind the scenes video on Patreon. But hopefully you can see from this just how much planning and support needs to go into a gravity-defying cake. What's next?
Today I had some extra butternuts from my butternut soup recipe, so I took my banana bread recipe, like the classic one, and then replaced the bananas with butternuts. Up until this point, I was feeling like a complete genius, thinking I've created the next revolutionary thing. And then I popped this into a baking tin and then baked it for around an hour, and that's where horror struck. The cake was actually super gummy inside and didn't turn out the way I expected.
If you want to swap ingredients like pumpkin for banana in a cake, the first thing you need to do is look it up on Food Data Central and see how much water there is, and also look at the protein, the fat, the carbohydrates and the total sugars. In a banana bread recipe, the amount of protein and fat from these two is really quite small and it's not going to make much difference. But if we look at the sugar, you'd get this much sugar from the amount of bananas, and the same weight of pumpkin has this much sugar. And of more concern though is that the pumpkin needed for this recipe has this much water in it, whereas the same amount of banana has considerably less water. So you'd need to remove that much liquid from elsewhere in your ingredient list. So let's do an experiment and leave out the yogurt altogether from the standard banana bread recipe. Everything else I'm going to do exactly the same, except we've just swapped those bananas for pumpkin instead. From the outside, this is looking pretty good. But when we cut it open, it's not great. It's still a bit gummy down the bottom there. I want to see what Dave thinks of it.
I think I took too big a mouthful. It's got a nice flavour. Quite moist. And it's got a little bit of a pumpkin pie flavour almost to it. That's pretty good. I'd eat that.
What about the texture?
It's a little bit sort of... that's probably why I said pumpkin pie rather than pumpkin scones, because it's a little bit sort of dense and squishy.
Now the reason that pumpkin doesn't swap very well for bananas is because bananas are special. If I put oil, water and banana in a blender, you get a thick mixture like this. The exact same amount of oil, water and pumpkin puree, and it looks like this. Now let me put this in fast forward for you, and you can see the pumpkin mixture separates out while the banana acts as an emulsifier and keeps the oil and water mixed together. Interestingly though, the pumpkin pulp seems to have stayed with the oil layer and not the water layer, and that might be contributing to the gumminess problem that we're having at the bottom of the cake. But we can try and overcome this problem by using raw grated pumpkin instead of cooked pumpkin puree. I'm also going to reduce the amount of pumpkin slightly to match the water content that was in the bananas so that I can still use the yogurt in the recipe. And I'm going to add 2 more egg yolks to act as extra emulsifiers in the recipe. And the result is much better. This is what it looked like before when we just reduced the liquid. Taste test time.
That's the best. That one's nice. That one's kind of light and fluffy, and still got a really nice pumpkin and walnut flavour. That's a winner. I like it.
Don't forget to pre-order Dave's book. With thanks to my amazing patrons for your support of this channel. You guys are absolute legends. Make it a great week by being kind to others, and I'll see you on Friday.